All right. I'm live. Breaking Conservatarian live. Checking this out. I'm using a different type of software here, so y'all can let me know if there was any issues, and I apologize if I jack something up here, but I think we'll be all right. Give me just a second here. I'm going to let people come in. Okay, let me grab the link. I'm going to share it out on Twitter real quick. What's up, Aaron? How you doing? Yeah, it is Black Han Solo. Never tell me the odds. And after this, I'll be doing a Black Kessel run. Only the nerds will understand what I mean. All right, gonna let some more people come in here. I'm sharing it on the tweeters right now. Okay. All right. How many parsecs? I'm going for 9 parsecs this time. So screw White Han Solo. He doesn't know what he's doing. I'm gonna let some more people come in. I just shared it on Twitter, so hopefully we'll get some more people in here. Let's see. I really need to start doing more of these. I kind of like doing them. All right. Dang, sis. All right, I'll acknowledge you. Felicia Killen's in the house. You are acknowledged. All right. Spicy spice, yes. I'm not going to be that spicy on this live stream, though. I don't think there's really a need for it. Let's see. Okay, got about 5 people. So I'll get started in just a minute here. Just going to let some other folks get in. Probably should have done this later tonight because everybody's at work, but that's okay. All right. And now I'm going to pull up some stuff that I'm going to be talking about. Okay. All right. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and get started, and then people can just come on in as they come. But the reason I wanted to do this live stream is because somebody asked me a really good question last week. So shout out to Zuri Davis, who hit me up on Twitter. I was supposed to answer this question last Friday and then over the weekend, but I got busy with the kids, so I couldn't really take the time out. And I didn't want to just do another tweet in response because I want to really give this a good go and really express how I'm feeling about all this stuff related to political violence and the riots that happened at the Capitol, and just political violence in general, and also the rioting that we saw last year over the summer. I actually did a debate with an activist, left-wing activist named Anthony Rogers Wright. Seems like a cool guy. I never met him before, but we had a pretty civil conversation, so I appreciated that. But I'm trying to pull up the question right now. See, I saved it to bookmarks and Twitter erased it. See, Twitter really doesn't like me. I know why. I know why they don't like me, but that's okay. Let's this way and see if I can pull it up quickly. I want to read the tweet to you. That's why. All right. Oops. Okay. Okay, I know what I'll do. Hold on. I'll be right there. Okay. Perfect. Got it. Okay. Sorry about the delay on that. All right, I've got it. P-Dog Knight. Yep, you know who it is now. Breaking Conservatarian is my other name. So yeah. Oh, I've got the one and only, the lovely Sonny Johnson in here. Oh, I better be on my A game right now, because I've got royalty. I've got conservative royalty here. Yeah, thanks, Big Paul. I got your elevator music right here. All right. All right, so I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's go. So this is the question that was asked to me by Zuri Davis. It was on a tweet that I posted last week. And, if you followed me for a while, I'm a smart ass. I'm very sarcastic. So basically I tweeted, I put, just so we're clear, questioning the result of the election is incitement to violence, but falsely claiming that your fellow lawmaker literally tried to have you murdered is not. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not accidentally supporting riots and stuff. So that's what I tweeted out. Obviously, I was being sarcastic because people are claiming that anybody who questioned the results of the election was responsible for the riots at the U.S. Capitol. And you even saw Ocasio-Cortez, who I'm making fun of here, she literally accused Senator Ted Cruz of attempted murder. She's claimed that he tried to have her murdered because he took issue with some of the results of the presidential election. So I'm going to go into that. So here's the question that she asked me while I get my little drink here. So here's her tweet. There's two of them, actually. So she's asking me this question. She asked, do you think GOP lawmakers who questioned the election and fed into the spirit that went into January 6th hold at least some responsibility in the way they make villains out of certain Democrats? And then she continues, from my own personal experience as a former Republican, I think many political commentators and politicians have crossed the line into criticizing popular Dems, Nancy Pelosi, AOC, the squad. It's gone far beyond policy disagreements. So that's what she just asked. That's what she asked me on Friday. And so I do want to weigh in on this. So first off, whenever there's an act of political violence or a riot, here's how I approach it. I blame the people who did it. It's plain and simple. The people who did the riots are to blame for the riots. They're the ones who bear the responsibility. I don't care who said what. I don't care what position they were in. Unless they put a gun to your head and told you to go riot or else they would kill you, you are responsible if you choose to riot. But I do understand the question, and the problem is that so many of these things are just so politicized that none of us really want to have an honest conversation about it. I shouldn't say none of us do. I mean, a lot of us do, but the people who have the most influence, the people who have the microphones, they don't really want to have an honest conversation on this. So let me talk about the riots at the Capitol specifically, and I'm gonna bring in Trump on this. Zuri didn't ask about Trump, but I mean that's the elephant in the room, right? Everybody, they're trying to impeach President Trump after he's out of office, ostensibly because he incited the riot at the U.S. Capitol. Now, I'm going to be factual here, and I'll also give my opinion as well. But the riots that happened at the U.S. Capitol, they started while President Trump was in the middle of the speech that they blamed for inciting the riot. So he wasn't even done talking, and these people had already started pushing back on police and trying to get into the Capitol. Now, during Trump's speech, he said to go down to the Capitol, but here's the part that leftists always want to leave out. He specifically said that he wanted people to make their voices heard peacefully. I'm gonna let that sink in. He said the word peacefully. So unless the word peacefully has somehow changed its meaning, President Trump was telling them to peacefully protest, to peacefully demonstrate, which is exactly what we all want. We always say we want peaceful protests. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. This whole impeachment proceeding is going to fall on its face because of that. And for another fact that they also like to leave out as well, even the Washington Post and CNN, which are not bastions of right-wing thought, right? They even admitted, they came to the conclusion that these riots were already planned before Trump ever gave his speech. And they didn't come to that conclusion. They acknowledged what the investigation is finding out. They're finding evidence that these rioters had already been planning this out before Trump ever gave that speech. So it could have been a few days before, it could have been a week before. I don't think we have the details on that yet. But this was going to happen regardless of what Trump said. So now, since the impeachment proceedings are basing their case on his speech, there's no way they're going to vote to convict. They already indicated that last week during Rand Paul's objection on the floor. 45 senators voted that impeaching a president after he's already out of office is unconstitutional. So that already gives us a sign of what's to come. But Democrats are looking at other measures. If when impeachment fails, when they fail to convict, they'll put it up for a vote to censure President Trump, which sounds like it means something, but I mean, to me, it really doesn't. I don't, so what? They censure him. They just say, hey, we don't like you or whatever. We don't like what you did. Okay, so what? But even so, I mean, if they're basing it on that speech, they're going to lose that too. I don't even think any Republicans will be on board with voting to censure President Trump. So now to go to the Republican senators, Senator Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, some of the others that that did object to some of the results of the presidential election. Now, remember, they didn't. Okay, really, Sonny? I like Pink Floyd, okay? Pink Floyd is great. They're my third favorite band. And you know what? Dave Gilmour, the guitarist, was one of the best guitarists of all time. I know I'm digressing right now, but if you listen to him play, that's almost like a black man playing the guitar because he's got the blues all in what he does. So anyway, back to the subject at hand. So Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, and some of the others, they were objecting to some of the results. They claimed that they were trying to overturn the election, but they weren't. They already knew that the election was decided. They just took issue with some of the battleground states who changed the laws and changed the rules in a way that they feel went against the Constitution to allow for certain votes to be counted when they should have. So that's all they were doing. They weren't saying, this whole election was stolen. Rand Paul wasn't saying that, even though he objected, even though he's gone on the media, on the news media, and he hasn't said that the election is stolen. He's just pointed out that there have been issues. And I'm sorry, anybody who tells you that this election was 100% squeaky clean is either uninformed or they're lying to you. I was on Fox Soul a couple weeks ago, and Roland Martin tried to sell me on that. I was like, no, you can't act like there was no issues with this election. I mean, you had over 100 affidavits sworn under penalty of perjury. You had over 2,000 incident reports. So were a lot of those BS? Probably, but you're not going to convince me that every single one of those people was lying or were wrong. So there were issues, and it's a legitimate thing to at least bring that up. So my point is, bringing that up is not an incitement to violence. Elections have been contested for years going back. This is not the first time an election has been contested. So if we're going to say that Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and Rand Paul are guilty of inciting violence, we have to say that about everybody else who has dared to question the results of the election. So no, I don't believe that questioning the results of the election it constitutes an incitement to violence, because there's really no evidence that that's what did it. I mean, if that's the case, then we're getting into dangerous territory, because if you express a certain opinion and then some nut jobs take your opinion and say, well, I'm going to use that to go commit violence, we're in a lot of trouble, because now we can't really say much of anything, because you can say that anything is an incitement to violence. That's not a world that we want to live in. That, I mean, and as much as people are trying to use that against conservatives now, they're not going to like it when that gets used against them. So, I mean, we can even apply that to the shooting when that guy James Hodgkinson, he was a Bernie supporter, tried to kill Republican lawmakers. You didn't see us coming out saying that, oh, this is Bernie Sanders is to blame for this. And the guy, while he was carrying out the shooting, quoted things that Bernie Sanders said about healthcare, about how Republicans don't want anybody to have healthcare and blah blah blah. You know all the arguments. But he was screaming those out while he was shooting people, attempting to murder them. I don't blame Bernie Sanders for that. Yeah, he was using certain rhetoric that he shouldn't have used. Yes, he was lying, but politicians lie. That's not an excuse to shoot somebody. So if you take a lie that somebody else says and use it as an excuse to shoot somebody, I don't blame that person. I don't blame the person who said the words. I blame the person who carried out the shooting. Now, if Trump had said, I want you to go down to the Capitol and I want you to rage out and be violent, now you've got some incitement of violence. If Ted Cruz or Rand Paul said anything even close to that, now you've got yourself an incitement to violence. So when it comes to the riots at Capitol Hill, I believe that there was an environment that resulted in those riots, just like there was a political environment that led to the Black Lives Matter / Antifa protests last year. Now, that's kind of what I want to talk about. Now, I don't blame the politicians for the actual violence. But I will say that there are politicians and pundits, members of the media, high-profile leaders who contributed to the environment that could spawn an act of violence, such as the riots at the Capitol. Just to go back to the question, Zuri asked about, demonizing people on the left or criticizing, or she says that it's gone far beyond policy disagreements, and she's right. We have gotten into what's the word I want to use? We've gotten into a tendency to define the entire left by their fringe elements. But it's not fair for me to just say that the right is doing this. We know that the left does this all the time. I mean, you hear me talk about nut picking a lot. And that's, for those who don't know, that's a practice that a lot of commentators like myself or journalists or even politicians will do as a political tool. So nut picking basically means you pick out the nuts on the other side that disagrees with you, and you make it sound as if they represent the rest of the movement. So kind of like how the media right now is trying to make it sound like the majority of Trump supporters are the same people as those who rioted, or they're trying to lump all conservatives in with these people that committed the act. And you hear a lot of conservatives complaining about it, and rightly so. They shouldn't be trying to lump everybody in with those rioters. As a matter of fact, most of the people who were at that rally did not engage in the riots. And even a lot of the people who even went into the building, they were just in there. The police let them in. They shouldn't have, but they let them in. And they're in there taking selfies. I mean, I'm sorry, that taking selfies is not an act of terrorism. That's trespassing at most. But then there were some who were fighting with the officers. One officer was killed. 3 people died from the riots, not 5, 3. The 5 number is a lie that they exaggerated. 2 people were at the rally and died from medical issues, not anything related to the riots. 1 person was trampled to death. That was an accident. Still, rioters, anybody who's involved with that should go to jail. The police officer was killed, and then the Capitol police officer shot and killed a woman. So 3 people died as a result of these riots. But where I was going with this is that when people try to make it sound like one group defines the rest of a movement, it creates an atmosphere, an environment where more violence can happen. Now, do I believe that people on the right fed into that environment? Yes. Do I believe that former President Trump fed into that environment? Yes, I do. Do I believe that there are some politicians who have? Yes, I do. I don't necessarily think that Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley or any of the rest did, but there are politicians on the right who feed into that. Conversely, on the left, you have a lot of that. I mean, you've got your CNN, you've got your Daily Beast, MSNBC. I mean, you can't call people Nazis and fascists for no good reason for 4 years and pretend like you're innocent. That stuff feeds into that type of environment, that type of political atmosphere that leads to acts of violence. So when you have groups like groups aligned with the Antifa movement who have been committing political violence for years, that is what causes that. And these Antifa people, they justify their violence by pretending that they're fighting against actual fascists. Now, in some cases, these people are actual Nazis. It doesn't give them an excuse to use political violence. But the thing is, they'll show up at just a regular MAGA rally and physically assault people. So yes, people on the right feed into this, but then you also have the media on the left and politicians on the left that feed into this as well. AOC, by accusing one of her colleagues of attempted murder, is feeding into this. And I can guarantee you that if somebody took a shot at Ted Cruz because of what she said, CNN would not be blaming her for it. So there's a lot of hypocrisy going around, and really there's a lot of destructive rhetoric that's being used on both sides. So they may not be directly responsible for the violence, but a lot of people do contribute to the political atmosphere that we're in right now. P-Dog Knight, intentionally, if you're asking me if these people are feeding into it intentionally, honestly, I think some are and some aren't. There's no way to know for sure in every single case, maybe on an individual basis, because sometimes when these people say things, I know that they're lying. So maybe they just think that it's not going to lead to anything, or maybe they just don't care. But even if it's not intentional, it's irresponsible. Like, they know that this stuff can lead to other issues. Another thing that I want to also note as well, and I brought this up in my debate with Anthony Rogers Wright, is the difference between how both sides respond to acts of violence. And again, I'm just going factual here, but when we saw the riots over last summer after George Floyd, you didn't see a whole lot of people on the left condemning the violence. There were like 2 or 3 local Black Lives Matter chapters. I think one of them was in Chicago, another in Utah, and then there was one more that I can't remember. They condemned the violence. Now some of them kind of condemned the violence and then kind of defended it a little bit, but they still condemned the violence, so I'll give them that. But I mean, you look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden still hasn't condemned Antifa by name. Whenever the question was brought to him during the campaign, he said he condemns all violence. But then when it involves Trump supporters, he'll say Trump supporters specifically. So if you compare that to how the majority of conservatives responded to the riots at the Capitol, there's a huge difference. And and if somebody can give me more examples of people on the left condemning Black Lives Matter, definitely hit me up with that. I'd love to see it. Hopefully I'm wrong about that. But with the riots, it was overwhelmingly condemned by people on the right. I think a lot of people on the right were surprised that it even happened, because we haven't seen that type of violence from right-wingers in recent memory. Now I'm not talking about like Timothy McVeigh and actual terrorist attacks. I'm just talking about the type of rioting that we saw on the left last year. We hadn't seen it. So a lot of people were surprised. And again, they condemned it. And polls show that the vast majority of conservatives did not approve of the riots. So there isn't really a level of moral equivalency here when it comes to violence. And I see that a lot of people on the left have tried to kind of make up for that gap because they know people on the left weren't really condemning this stuff the way they should. Again, there were some, but I mean, not in full force. So they try to make up for that gap by saying, oh, well, this was an attack on the U.S. Capitol. The other ones were just attacks on cities and private property. So, and I tweeted about this a while ago, but it was very interesting to me that they are okay with leftist rioters burning Black businesses, not just Black businesses, but terrorizing Black neighborhoods. But they think that that's not as bad as rioting at the Capitol. Now, I understand the Capitol, it's a symbol, it's a historic building, whatever. But to me, it's just another, to me, probably a lot of other conservatives, it's just another government building. I don't hold the government in that level of reverence to where I'm going to care as much about that as Black businesses. I mean, I would much rather you do what you do at the Capitol than go around terrorizing Black neighborhoods. So there really isn't a moral equivalency here. I'm not now. There are issues where both sides are equally at fault, and then there are some issues that the left has more than the right, and there are other issues that the right has more than the left, and it's okay to acknowledge that. But if we're not going to be honest about this, then nothing will ever get done to fix it, and that's really where I want to get to. We need to be able to have these conversations. I think I think that the majority of rank and file Democrats would condemn the violence that they saw after George Floyd. They don't have the microphone, but I'm sure if you were to ask them, if you were to sit down and say, "Well, do you approve of the violence? Do you approve of torching buildings?" They're going to say, "No, I don't approve of that." That's why most of their protests were peaceful, the mostly peaceful protests. They wanted us to give them the benefit of the doubt on them because it was mostly peaceful, but they don't do the same when it comes to the riots on the Capitol because most of the people there weren't rioting. Just wanted to kind of throw that in there. But really, I mean, if we're not able to have honest conversations about these things, then nothing will get done. And with my debate, with Anthony Rogers Wright, it actually ended up with an agreement that we need to actually have honest conversations about these issues. He and I agreed on the issue of police officers not being held accountable when they overstep their boundaries. That's the starting point to have conversations. The problem is that the powers that be don't want us to have those conversations. They don't want us talking about police brutality. They don't want us talking about election integrity. They don't want us being able to sit down at a table or whatever the format is and really listen to each other and try to work things out, even though we may disagree on certain details. So this stuff is going to keep happening unless people like you and I say that they basically take the position that we've had enough. The fringes on both sides are the ones who are fueling a lot of this animosity. Rank and file people can sit down and have, I mean, I'm here in Austin, Texas, and I tell the story a lot, but at places where, one of the places where I worked before I started creating content full time, I had two coworkers on my team, one big white biker dude, like literally biker dude, like he would go biking on the weekends, total Trump supporter, as you might imagine. The other guy was a black dude, just a regular black dude, voted Democrat, didn't really like Trump, but even he could even kind of say there were certain things that he thought that were good that Trump did, but they would debate these things civilly, and then they'd still be friends afterwards. I think that describes most people. I think that we tend to think that real life looks a lot like Twitter or looks like a panel on Fox News or CNN where people are just yelling at each other. Yeah, that is certainly there, and it's growing and it's getting worse. I do agree that it's getting worse, and I'm concerned about it. But I still think that the majority of people are capable of having civil conversations about politics. The problem is that what we always see is the animosity. We see people at each other's throats on our media. That's all they show. They don't show civil conversations. So the idea is that people who actually want these, like the exhausted majority, the people who are sick of the fringes on both sides, we need to be able to rise up and repudiate people on our side who are contributing to this. It's one thing if I call out people on the left who are contributing to the animosity in political discourse. They're not going to listen to me because I'm a conservative, and vice versa. The fringes on the right aren't going to listen to people on the left calling that out. But you know what? They might listen to people who are on their own side because they have a harder time repudiating that. So this stuff will only get fixed when people on both sides are willing to call out people on their side who are engaging in this type of rhetoric. I don't know if we're there yet. I don't think we've gotten fed up with it enough. And I hate to say this, so I think it's going to take a major tragedy for us to finally realize, hey, we got to start figuring out how to work together even when we disagree. So that was pretty much what I wanted to say in answer to that question. I'll look at some of the chats here if you have questions. Dems control all branches. I don't think they feel an incentive or obligation to talk. No, I don't either. I don't think that their goal is to try to help calm things down or not. The calls for unity are basically, it's just platitudes. It's just designed to make it look like Biden is trying to reach out to the other side. Hopefully they prove me wrong, but that's what I'm seeing so far. Let's see. Let me go back up here. Do you think Trump was obligated to tell the crowd what he knew of Mike Pence's status? I'm not sure what you mean when you say that. If you could explain a little bit more. P-Dog Knight, the pipe bombs at the RNC and DNC were found to have been placed the day before the speech. Yeah, that's true. More proof that the case for impeachment is going to fall flat. They were already planning this, guys. I mean, Trump did not incite this with his speech, and nobody can actually point to anything that Trump has said that should have incited violence. Him disputing the election, whether you agree with it or not, that is not an incitement to violence. That is an opinion that you disagree with. You might be thinking he's lying about it, and he might be, but honestly, I think he believes what he says. Doesn't mean I agree with him, but I'm not going to say that just because somebody disagrees with me, that means they're inciting violence. Let's see. No, Pink Floyd did not have banjos. Good God. Gilmore was okay. P-Dog Knight blocked and reported. You don't just say David Gilmour was David Gilmour is a man, all right? I didn't really block you. Guitar Hendrix, yeah, of course. Hendrix, greatest of all time. I just got a Hendrix shirt, actually, so maybe I'll wear that on the next live stream. Has anyone asked what intelligence briefings Trump got about that day prior? I have heard people say that he was warned about it, but I don't know if that's true or not. And even if he was warned, I mean, for all I know, that's maybe why he emphasized the word peacefully when he gave his speech. But at the end of the day, I mean, what was he really supposed to do about it? I mean, I don't know if he's was even in control. It was up to the city of DC to have National Guard or whomever out there, and they decided not to for whatever reason. There may have been a good reason for it, but I don't know what that is. Let's see. Logan, Jeff, I love your stuff. Don't always agree, but that's politics. When can we just call it straight? Trump told lies about the election. It was stolen, Dominion voted, etc. People follow leadership. Okay, you're right. People do follow leadership. But again, that doesn't mean that he incited violence, especially since he never actually called for violence. So like I said just a second ago, you may think that Trump lied, and maybe he didn't. Maybe Trump doesn't believe anything he's saying about the election being stolen. Even so, that is not an incitement to violence. Let's see what else we got here. Okay. Oh, and then, okay, so follow up. Can we expect something like this to happen when the leader tells lies? Maybe, but if that's the case, I mean, we'd have to treat every politician like this. I mean, you're not going to find a politician who hasn't lied at one point or another, right? I mean, presidents have lied, senators have lied, representatives have lied. It's a part of politics. Since the beginning of politics, there have been politicians lying. So again, I blame the people who carried out the act, not the people who are telling the lies. Again, people do contribute to the atmosphere and to the environment that could lead to something like that. But the fault lies with the people who committed the act. Let's see. Big Paul, do we need to address why as a society we are so quick to violence? Bigger issue, almost a psychological discussion. That one's above my pay grade, bro. You know, I will say that, I mean, there are a lot of other countries whose inhabitants would rush to violence much worse than we have. But they also have it worse than we have. They don't have as free a society as we do. But I mean, it is a good question. I mean, when I think about the riots, when I saw them doing it, I was like, what do they actually think they're going to accomplish? They know this isn't going to do anything. And that's why I don't take it seriously when people say, oh, they were trying to overthrow the government. No, they knew that they weren't going to stop the election. They knew that Biden was still going to be inaugurated. I don't care about the whole QAnon thing. If they were actually trying to stage a coup, they would have ran in there armed and they would have been shooting. They didn't. The only shot that was fired by a Capitol police officer. So this was not a coup attempt like people say it was. But I wonder what these people were even trying to accomplish. Like, what did they think was going to happen? But I think it was just a bunch of people who were just frustrated at what they believed to be was a stolen election. And they acted that out and they did some stupid shit. And I hope that they go to jail for a long time. Let's see. Yeah, Big Paul, Eric Weinstein says this all the time. I've seen Weinstein on Joe Rogan before. He says each side needs to address their own to show serious concern. And you're right. I mean, nothing will change until people on both sides are willing to get out of this team sports mentality and tell it like it is. We need more commentators who are willing to do that. I mean, a lot of time I take a lot of issue with pundits on both sides because they use their platforms in a way that is irresponsible. I mean, it's one thing to disagree and say, you know, I don't agree with what Democrats are doing here, or even if there's like an individual who you really think is horrible and say, you know, I don't like this guy or for whatever reason. But this wholesale demonization of the other side is dangerous. And the saying used to go that, you know, Democrat or conservatives think that leftists are wrong but not evil, but the other side, the leftists, think that conservatives are all evil. I don't think that's true anymore. I think that both sides, or not legitimately, both sides genuinely think that the other side is evil. I mean, when I talk to some people on the right, the things that they say about Democrats, I'm like, first off, you're just reciting talking points that you've been given. Two, like, you don't need to have this level of animus towards people on the left. I mean, it's one thing to be sarcastic. You know, I'm sarcastic. I go after the left hard. I'll say things that are harsh, but I don't hate people on the left. I hate what they're pushing, but I don't hate them. There's very few people on the left who I can really say that I just dislike a lot. Let's see. I think so. I got another one here. I think people are at a point where they have no faith that leaders will listen or do anything to try and address concerns. It was an explosion of frustration. Yes, I agree with that. And I will say that about the Black Lives Matter riots and Antifa riots as well. These people aren't just doing this stuff just because they like to riot. I mean, there are some people who are opportunistic and taking the violence as an opportunity to loot stores and steal stuff. But in general, I mean, one thing that we have in common on both sides is that the rank and file we don't trust the people who we put in office. We may trust some of them, but we don't trust them in general. And you know what? You know, you always have to look at who benefits from all this. Is it the left that benefits? Well, not really. Not the rank and file. The people who benefit are the elites. They want us at each other's throats. The last thing that they want to see is what I described earlier, people just sitting down and being able to hash this stuff out and come up with something productive. That's the last thing that they want. The elites benefit from that because while we're fighting each other, we're not fighting them. We're not dealing with them. We're not holding them accountable. We're too busy trying to own the libs or own the cons. And there is a lesson in that, but I don't know what it's going to take for the country to wake up. We can't keep going this way. Something's got to give. And I really hope that it doesn't take another tragedy like a 9/11 or something else to make us less divided. I mean, there's always going to be some division because people disagree, but the level that it's at right now it's concerning. Let's see. Does anybody else have any questions? Let's see. Okay, it doesn't look like it. So yeah, but definitely let's continue the conversation. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll be doing more of these live streams now that I've kind of figured out how to do it. But yeah, let's definitely do more of this. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and I'll see you out in the Twitterverse.